Hello my friends and welcome to this new flight of the Sankofa. You have probably heard of Erasmus of Rotterdam, aka the Prince of Humanists, which most European students have heard of through the famous Erasmus program. Well, if there is a prince, then there must be a king somewhere, right? But then who is it? I think I found him for you, and he is from West Africa. Of course you would think. Yeah, well, he was born in 1556. Some sources trace his birth to Arawan in present-day northwestern Mali, but it is more likely that he was born in Timbuktu, where his family has previously settled. Great scholar and researcher, he was sent to Marrakesh after the invasion of the city by Morocco in 1590, and there he continued his research before returning to Timbuktu. So, ladies and gentlemen, please stand up for the king of humanists. Here goes the great Ahmed Baba al-Soudani, the man from Timbuktu. And as if it was not enough to have found a king for you, I went out of my way to select the best Sankofa rider possible on this topic. Dr. Luc Ngowet, a senior policy advisor in the office of the Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General for the Great Lakes region based in Nairobi in Kenya. But today, he's here as a researcher. He's here as a doctor of philosophy from the University of Paris Sorbonne. He was program director at the International College of Philosophy, where he led from 2013 to 2019 seminars on what he names the theoretical foundations of African political modernity. He is a published author and he is currently preparing a book on African political thought as well as an intellectual biography on the great black American philosopher, historian, sociologist and activist William Du Bois, an incredible character that Luc will of course discuss with me in this podcast very soon.
African History Daily by my daddy.
That was a long introduction. Okay, so let's jump in right away. Hello Luc, how are you? Thanks a lot for joining me today. I'm delighted to discuss this interesting topic with you.
Bonjour Alex, c'est à moi de
Thanks,
remercier
Teju.
de me...
It's actually for me to thank you for inviting me to your excellent show. I hope listeners will enjoy the conversations.
So before we start, let's situate a bit Ahmed Baba in history. The sources that I found placed him as a medieval philosopher. Why is he placed in that period when the conventional division of what is imposed to us as universal history considers the Middle Ages to be from the 5th century to the 15th century?
Merci pour la question Alex. Je dirais qu'il faut...
Great question, Teju. I would say we have to distinguish the division of so-called universal history, in fact, Western history, from the division of African history. If we consider, in fact, that the Middle Ages go roughly from the disappearance of the Western Roman Empire in 476 to the fall of Constantinople in 1453, or even to the so-called discovery of America, it would be abusive to speak of a similar African Middle Ages, not only from a conceptual point of view, but also in terms of historical division. It is by extension, or by abuse, that we speak of the Middle Ages in Africa, and therefore of a medieval author. But the most important thing here is to remember that Ahmed Baba was an eminent scholar, teacher, lawyer from Timbuktu, who therefore lived between October 26, 1556 and April 22nd, 1627.
Great, Luc, thanks on that. So now, in order to locate him in the space, geographically, was Ahmed Baba a Berber, an Arab Berber, a Negro Berber, or a Sudanese, or maybe anything else? What do you think?
Bon, en fait, c'est difficile de dire. Les différentes sources dont on dispose...
In fact, I don't know, but the sources available indicate that he was the grandson and great-grandson of great Tuareg intellectual and religious figures from Timbuktu. It is not impossible that he himself comes from a certain ethnic mix, but what is certain is that he belongs to a famous Tuareg family line and that he had perfect command of Arabic.
He indeed studied until the age of about 30 and was presented as the most educated man in Timbuktu at the time of Moroccan expedition in 1590. He studied subjects such as philosophy, logic, exegesis, law, grammar, theology, rhetoric, history, literature, etc. He had a particularly rich library with probably more than 1,600 books. He himself wrote a total of 56 well-known books, half of which were written during his time in Morocco between 1593 and 1607. So in view of all this, why are we always, even in Africa, talking about the Greek famous philosophers and never about Ahmed Baba?
Ta question, Alex, est très très intéressante.
Again, your question is interesting. I will come back to the comparison with Plato in a moment. But first, it should first be noted that Ahmed Baba was not a professional philosopher as such. He was rather a doctor of Quranic law, a historian, a jurist, in short, a scholar of Quranic law. Yet, if he was not a trained philosopher, Baba was one in practice. The 50 or so works, treatises, commentaries, biographies, and historical accounts that he left to posterity have an indisputable philosophical character. Moreover, that his thought was steeped in philosophy, in the Greek sense of the term, is not surprising. Besides the fact that Baba was a wise man whose advice was prized by his scholarly peers in the Maghreb, it should also be noted that at this time, as put by the great Sheikh Anta Diop, Muslim Black Africa commented on Aristotle's formal logic and was already dialectic. Moreover, in addition to his commitment to Quranic principles and moral values that he undoubtedly shared with other scholars in Timbuktu, Baba was also attached to the rigor of rational demonstration, to justice, and to the freedom to think, up to risking his life. Baba was exiled in Morocco for sedition shortly after and the fall of the Songhai, invaded by Pasha Mahmud Zarqun. In that sense, the career and the intellectual figure of Baba are not mutatis mutandi, without recalling those of the famous Greek philosopher Socrates, of whom Plato was one of the eminent disciples.
Exciting, Luc. Thank you. Listen, what if we take a break to mentally transport ourselves to Timbuktu to dive back into the intellectual turmoil that must have been so great to be in, right? So let's continue this discussion in a short while.